Okay, good. Well, as we get started, I just want to say thanks to everyone for coming and welcome to the Master of Arts in Higher Education Administration Open House for April 2022. My name is Tiffany Riggers-Peel, and I'm the coordinator for the Higher Education Administration programs in the Master of Arts and Educational Doctorate. Today, we're going to introduce the program and our panelists. Then we're going to have some time with our panelists to hear about their experiences in the MA program, what they're doing now, and a little bit about the future of higher education. And then we do have time for a Q&A with them. And then we'll share a little bit about the Master of Arts in Higher Education program. So first, I just want to share about the program mission. The Master of Arts in Higher Education Administration prepares individuals for leadership positions within higher education institutions. Program graduates will demonstrate knowledge, skills, and competencies that are essential to careers as leaders in higher education settings. And we think that graduates should be and will be able to evaluate higher education institutions, their histories, to initiate social change in higher education settings and collaborate and communicate across diverse groups. And finally, graduates will be able to evaluate contemporary scholarship as informed practitioners through an understanding of research methods and theory. And I like to share that mission because it's really important to us that our graduates have competencies that allow them to succeed within higher education settings across diverse groups, but also outside higher education settings within nonprofits and other types of organizations. I wanted to also share the program demographics over some 2015 to 2022. We have about 30 students enrolling per semester over the past 5 academic years. 65% of those students are female, 35% identify as male. And if you can see our race ethnicity breakdown on the screen, about 56% of our students identify as white, 28% as Black or African American, and 7% as Latino or Latinx, with the remainder as multiracial, international, or another race or ethnicity. One of the things that's really important to us as a program is that we increase the representational diversity within our student body with the goal of increasing the representational diversity of higher education professionals in our colleges and universities on campus. The idea being that as we increase diversity of higher education professionals on campus, we would continue to improve the opportunity for students to enroll in college, to persist in college, to graduate from college, and ultimately to continue to diversify the higher education administration staff level and faculty level on campus with the goal of increasing campus climate for students of color and campus employment for faculty and staff of color, that we would continue to diversify and improve the experience of all people on campus. And so that's part of the reason why we're having these recruitment events. We want to improve the opportunity for all of our students in our program. And so with that, I wanted to introduce our panelists today. So panelists, hold on, where's my button? There we go. So I'm gonna share my other screen. Today's panelists are Brian Ramirez and Alex Perez. And here we go. There we go. So is that showing you the slideshow or the weird slides? Weird slides. There we go. Okay, so today's panelists are Brian Ramirez, who is an upcoming academic advisor for RU Advising at UMKC. He was an undergraduate major in Spanish and Health Sciences at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. And before finding his passion in higher education, he worked in the nonprofit sector. He was previously a graduate assistant in residential life. And as I mentioned, he will be starting soon as an academic advisor for the RN to BTSN program at UMKC. He's currently a student in the Master of Arts in Higher Education Administration program. Also with us today is Alex Perez, who's the Director of Scholarship Program for the Hispanic Development Fund here in Kansas City. Alex has her Bachelor of Arts in Interdisciplinary Studies from Mizzou and earned her Master of Arts in the Higher Education program at UMKC in 2017. She's been with the Hispanic Development Fund for about 2 years. And before that, she was with UMKC and MCC in academic advising. She also volunteers with the Kansas City, Missouri Parks and Rec Department as in the Board of Commissioners. So I've asked them here today to talk a little bit about their experience in the program, but also to share a little bit about what they're doing and how the Higher Education Master of Arts program can prepare folks for careers in higher education and in nonprofit work. So I wonder if both of you would be willing to share a little bit about what you're doing now or what you will be doing, and how you feel like the higher education administration degree prepares you for those kinds of careers. And whichever one of you wants to start, I'll let you decide.
Ryan, do you want to go or you want me to go? I don't want to.
I can go first. As a current student, I always saw a connection of, seeing retention and seeing why I have this passion. And with being in the classes, I've been able to learn about theories, learn about lenses that have helped me understand why certain things are impactful, and also why I want to be a part of the difference that I want to see on campus or in colleges and university. So that to me has been very fun to see that lens of theories and scopes. Alex?
Yeah, so for me, I kind of did the program backwards, or I guess in that I was already well into my career before I started my master's. And one of the reasons being is that I didn't know for sure what I wanted to do after my bachelor's degree. So I kind of, if you notice, it was interdisciplinary studies, which basically means I changed my mind a lot and then said, just give me whatever I can have. And so, which ended up working really well, because I got to work in healthcare. I got to work in like the fashion industry. I got to work in insurance. I did a little bit of everything, family services. And so I was a family caseload manager over for the state of Kansas, the benefits office. And one of my colleagues got a job as an academic advisor at KCKCC. And he was like, Alex, you should join me over here. You would be great at this, And I had counseling experience from working at KU Med, but it was in smoking cessation, which is completely different. But, I was like, well, that does sound appealing. And then when I went over there, I was like, I can't believe people get paid to do this, because I just loved it, and I didn't have that when I was in school. I'm first gen, so I actually didn't even know, we didn't have academic advising that was required when I was in undergrad. And I wish we would have, because it would have saved me time and money, because I was navigating the system alone. And so, I once I started academic advising, I noticed that, all of the job postings had prefer masters, and of course, at least bachelor's with experience, but master's preferred. And when you look at the wage difference, it was always like $10,000, give or take. So it's like, I need this piece of paper so that I can move up, not just financially, but also people treat you different, when they see, specifically as a woman of color, as a minority, when you have a bachelor's degree versus when you have a master's degree, there are more opportunities that open up. And I feel like people, for lack of a better term, they listen to you more. So yeah, I went about it that route.
Yeah, and just to add on about that, Alex, I think it's that because as soon as I graduated with my bachelor's, I wanted to go into academic advising. I wanted to get into higher ed, but I was applying and it just was very quiet. Like I wouldn't get interviews back, I wouldn't get callbacks. And, just unfortunately, when I was getting closer to getting my master's, I started getting callbacks, started being like, hey, and now that you said that, I'm just like, wow, this piece of paper means something. But, I'm also just here because I want to do it. I have passion in it. So it's kind of sad to see those both things, but we're here for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, you're going about it a completely different way, where you're getting the education before you get out in the field, which is also a challenge in of itself, because a lot of the job postings say, education or experience, but it's like, how are you going to get the experience if you don't have the education to open the doors for the experience? So that can be frustrating, but Yeah, I did academic advising for about 8 years before I went on to the scholarship program at the Hispanic Development Fund.
Love that.
Excellent. I think you're really hitting the nail on the head to the challenge of education versus experience. And there are still some opportunities where you can kind of get your foot in the door without the education, but they're rarer. And if you can get those opportunities, you do end up hitting a ceiling where you need the master's degree then to continue to move onward. So then the master's degree comes in handy. But then we have a lot of students now who are coming in with their right after undergrad to get their master's degree. For those students, a lot of them are looking for graduate assistantships, which now at UMKC with our new Dean of Students, that's become an increased priority of hers. She came from a program at Missouri State where they had a lot of graduate assistantships. So she's making that an increased priority at UMKC now to make sure that there's graduate assistantships available within the Division of Student Life, especially so that hopefully as students come in from undergrad, they have more opportunity to get graduate assistantships so they can at least get a little bit of experience, because that's sometimes a challenge when you're coming in straight from undergrad to graduate school. And then you're like, oh, but I have this piece of paper, but then I don't have the experience that folks like you have, Alex, when you're going into that. So that's a good point. Tell us about some of your experiences in the graduate program, the Master of Arts program, both of you. Maybe some of the experiences you had that you felt like were maybe your most memorable. What were some of the classes that you remember best? Alex, you were talking about your experience with Dr. Smith. Right, maybe you can talk about, you can even talk about some of your compare and contrast experiences that you had. Anything you feel like sharing about the Master of Arts experience that you think would be useful to students who are thinking about graduate school in this program?
Sure. So one of the things that I really liked about the program was the convenience of having evening classes, because I was an adult learner at that time, so I was working full time already and had my responsibilities, family and everything. So I was able to, leave work for the 4 o'clock or 4:30, whatever time that is, the 4 to 7. And then I had a class from like 7 to 10 p.m. So it was extremely long days, and it was challenging, of course, but, it allowed me to still continue to work and go to school at the same time. And one of the benefits that I had is, like I said, I was already an academic advisor. So I was already in the field. So it was more like learning about theory and research. So kind of like backwards, right? I got in my field practice first and then learned about the why and the how. So that was really neat to be in the academic advising role every day, and then learning about a master's, in higher education and seeing what other opportunities I could have. So I spent some time interviewing folks that are, administrators, counselors, people in different jobs that sounded interesting to me, and that maybe if I was not in the program, I would have not had access to them, because, my network was limited as a younger professional. And so some of my mentors then started me connecting to other folks. And one of my mentors, Dr. Grosspitch, he was one of the former deans of students at UMKC. And he was my very first professor in the graduate program. So he was adjunct professor. And, I walked into his class, and I had been at his school for 10 years at that time. And even though I work with college students every day, and I'm like, oh, it's fine, blah, blah, blah. It's like stepping back into the classroom was scary. I was one of the older students too, everybody else was like Brian, fresh out of their bachelor's. And so that was a little intimidating, which also brought perspective, because it took me back to the incoming freshman, the real fear of being first, setting foot on campus. And it's like, if me as a professional, if I'm having these anxiety or whatever, then it's definitely something that we need to remember. That's a real issue. And so Dr. Grosspitch connected me to other folks in different departments at UMKC and outside of UMKC. And I was at KCKCC at the time, but through networking and informational interviews, I actually ended up getting a job at the University College there at UMKC. He introduced me to everyone there. And so there was a job opening, and I applied, and I truly believe that had it not been for that networking opportunity and, you know, knowing people firsthand and having those references, that opens so many doors. So for me, that was one of the highlights of the program. You know, maybe sometimes not so much that class that you have to take that you're dreading, but the opportunities that it truly creates to connect in the field and in the community. Oh, and I didn't answer your question about Dr. Smith. Yeah, so Dr. Rodney Smith, he was my professor for, what class is that? Like, you know, your diversity class.
It's called Racial and Ethnic Diversity and Cultural Understanding.
Yes, so I remember stepping in that classroom and I was, you know, 33, 34 at the time, and I had never had a professor of color. So, you know, for me to have gone all the way from middle school, high school, associates, bachelor's, and until 33 to see a professor who was not white was impactful. And, you know, I held on to him and he became a mentor as well. And then, you know, we became colleagues. And to this day, I think if it was not for the program, I would have not met Dr. Smith, who's just had a great influence on me.
Yeah, that's one of our most popular classes. Students really enjoy him as an instructor, and that class, I think, has a really powerful impact on every student that takes it.
Yeah, he definitely, like I think Nabel said, he keeps it real. Yeah, I remember one time we walked into class, and maybe this is giving it away. I don't know if he still does this for new students, but he was sitting. Have you had the class, Brian? Okay, I don't know if he still does it, but we walked into class. It was towards the beginning of the class, and he was wearing, you know, like a hoodie, and he was sitting among the students. And I think everybody was kind of waiting for the professor because no one really like noticed who he was. And it was just sending a message of, you know, you guys see me up there as a professor and you treat me different than you do when you might see me on the streets, like wearing a hoodie or whatever, and you might even be afraid of me as a Black man walking towards you. And it's situations like that you don't find in the textbook that really put things into perspective and make it real, you know? So yeah, I mean, he expressed his own prejudices, and it's when faculty and staff and co-workers and, you know, fellow students open up about the real situations that we encounter in the field, that we can move and advance, you know, unless we talk about these things openly.
I love it. Thanks, Alex. Brian, what did you want to, what could you share about your experiences in the MA program? It's obviously really fresh for you.
No, I think for me, something that really drew my attention, I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but I was always so anxious about a GRE. You know, a lot of grad programs like, you have to have a GRE, you have to do this, you have to do this. And when I found out, you know, the MA program higher ed doesn't have a GRE requirement. I mean, there's other requirements, but, you know, that requirement that I thought, you know, Brian, this is the barrier for me to grad school. And to see that that was eliminated, that was off the table, I said, you know what, I can do this. So that to me was something very important. And I think a lot of students, when they hear about that, they're like, oh, wow, I didn't know that. So that's something that was a highlight for me. But also to me was the culture. I mean, the networking, as Alex said, as a minority, I don't know much about networking or why it's important, but, you know, during my time in the MA program, I found out that networking is important. You need it. And the program has a lot of different walks of life, individuals who are well seasoned in higher ed, or people that are like me that are just getting out of undergrad. And you really get to meet a lot of wonderful people across the country that come to UMKC for their MA program. And that to me was awesome because, again, you get to hear the perspective and learn about different things. And another class that really stuck out to me was history of higher education. Specifically, the reason why I remember this class so much is learning about land grant institutions. You know, I was a 22-year-old and never heard of this word and said, wow, I didn't know about this, and how that can be impactful, and how some universities do not have a statement, and how even just that it's hard for students of diverse populations to come to an institution. So that to me was also interesting. But yeah, that was me.
Excellent. Thanks, guys. Thank you both.
And the way Brian and I met too, this just goes back to the importance of networking, because you got to look up for your own. And Dr. Garrett was Brian's professor, and she's my personal friend. We used to work at KU Med when we were doing the smoking cessation program. So, it's all about paying it forward and wanting to see those who come after you moving up, bringing them with you. And so she really listened to what Brian wanted to do. And so she connected, him with me, and he wasn't sure about the program. Then he learned more about what I was doing. And then now he's doing that for others, So I think like whenever we meet people and we start to advance, like, don't forget about the people who got you there, and then the people that are after you. You got to pay it forward always.
Yeah.
Snappy, right? Run the bill,
Yeah.
snappy.
Good. One of the questions that we talked about was why you want to see more Latinx folks in higher education administration leadership. And I'd love to hear both of you reflect on that.
I can start off. I remember when I first transferred to UMKC, after obtaining my associates, I was given an award letter and had no idea what this award letter meant or what to do with it and how to move forward. And I went to the financial aid office, financial aid and scholarship office, and said, "Hey, can someone please help me understand what this award letter means?" And I actually said, "Can someone help me interpret this letter?" And I was first told, what do you mean by interpret? There's nothing to interpret here. I'm just like, what, dude? Like, I'm here asking for help. I'm here just confused. I'm genuinely here because I don't know what's next. Mm-hmm. And I think that to me spoke to me and saying, having that piece of kindness, having that understanding of barriers and obstacles that individuals face in college is priceless, and not many people understand that. And just to have the competency of knowing barriers that students of color face, that's when I say, what, Brian, I have to be on the other side. I have to be on the other side of the desk. I have to have a seat at the table, and I want to have that seat at the table. So that to me was what spoke to me.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Yeah, similar to that. And I would add that, yes, it's important to have, people who look like us, but it's also really important that if you are not a person of color, that you make it really clear really early that you are an ally, if that is indeed true, and that you walk the talk. Like I was saying, back to Dr. Grosbitch, my very first day of class, it was whenever Michael Brown, when everything was happening in St. Louis and there were the protests and everything. And the first day of class, he said, let's go to the protest, so he was a white man. And to me, that said more than anything he could have ever tried to preach. The fact that he's like, class will be here all semester. Yeah. Let's go be of support to the BIPOC students and everything. So I think to me, I started to trust him, because my first instinct, maybe I'm conditioned that way, but it's to not trust. Yeah. Until you prove me otherwise. I've been burned a lot. So it is important to have also, there are folks who look like us, but don't have the best interest. So to me, yes, representation is important, but I think loyalty and gaining trust and empathy, I think like empathy trumps any skin color. You show me that you're going to be there for me and gain my trust. And, that's, I don't ever want like folks who are white or any other ethnicity, like Dr. RP, to feel like she can't relate to students of color, because to a certain degree you can't, but empathy and, goes a long way. And the more that you're interested in truly getting to know folks for who they are, the better we'll understand, each other.
Yeah. Well, I think it's nice of you. I mean, I appreciate you saying that for me. I really appreciate it, Alex. I think that it's important to me to be an ally to the students of color in our program. It's important to me to increase representation in our program of all different kinds of diversity, because I think that we need to make sure that our program represents our world, and I think that's a value that I hold really highly. I think that our I have a really strong, our students know this who are in our program, that I have a really strong vision of what the public university should look like. And so I talk about it a lot, and I try to make sure that that's infused in our program and in our classes. But I also think that to your point, I think that a lot of people say stuff that they don't necessarily represent in the way that they teach and the way that they behave. I think that for me, if I can answer this to you, but I think that there is a value in students seeing people that look like them across the desk.
Yes.
Understanding that this is something that they can aspire to be like Brian or like Alex, who was their academic advisor when they were in college, or even knowing that academic advising exists. I also went back to grad school 10 years out of college, and there wasn't those kind of services when I was an undergrad too. So those things were new to me when I was like, wait, what do people in higher ed do? I didn't even know those were jobs.
Right.
But there is value, right, in seeing those people across the table from you who look like you, and seeing professors who look like you. And hopefully those people are helping to lift people up and do that work. And that's what we're hoping to do in this program, is continue to bring up folks that are going to be out there doing the work to create a more equitable and just institution, in transforming it in ways that disrupt professionalism, that disrupt capitalism, that really transform the university to be better than it is right now, in a lot of the ways that it currently is struggling to be. Not just UMK. I'm not talking about UMKC necessarily particularly, but the institution of higher education, I think, has a long ways to go. And that's why places like the Hispanic Development Fund exists. It's a reason why MCAC, like MCAC exists, and why we have to have nonprofit institutions that work to increase college access, because the institutions aren't right yet. And so, the more that we can do to increase our equity and opportunity in college, I think the more we're gonna to hopefully see opportunity increase too. So yeah, I think I said that kind of weirdly, but I think we know.
No, like it makes sense. And just like you said, seeing people to this day, I've been a professional for a long time now, but I still, every meeting that I go to, like every board meeting of the different boards that I'm on, or just high administrator meetings, I always count. I'm like, okay, how many men are in this meeting? How many women are in this meeting? How many people of color are in this meeting? And so, when people ask me to like join a board or do something, my time is so limited, and I'm so stretched thin sometimes. But then I get to those meetings and I see that there is really no one else who would represent my community. And I'm like, okay, that's important to be here. But it's also like, reach out to other folks, start bringing up younger leaders, because I always find the same people in these rooms. And I'm like, you're not being inclusive. Like, we need to start bringing, Carla and Brian and Nabil into these spaces, because I'm tired of seeing the 60-year-olds that have been in the same room for 30 years. And
so I love that. I think that's one of the reasons why,
she's
right?
Recording this.
No, but I think, Alex, you make a really good point, and that's part of the reason why we decided to do these recruitment events this year, was so that we could say, we need more Carlas and Nabils and Brians and Alexes in our program, so that we could be raising up more leaders and increasing that networking that you and Brian are talking about, so that you're not doing all the work, so that I'm not doing all the work, so that we're not all out there. There's not, this limited pool of people. And so that so that there are more people for you to reach out to network and be doing the work that needs to be done, because you're tired.
I'm tired. I'm always telling my students, hurry up, start.
Just get through, so that you
I want to pass down the torch. I don't want
to go to a vacation.
You take over and you do better than me.
Well, before we move to Q&A, would you each share a little bit about what you see? I forgot to tell you about this question before, but what you each see as kind of maybe the future of higher education from your perspectives? It's a big question, so answer however you see fit.
Wow. It's it can be, it's so exciting to start in the profession, and you know, I love the energy, the young energy, and I want folks to stay in the field. You know, it's such a, just education in general, not just higher ed, especially right now, you know, we're seeing with the great resignation. When you're wanting folks to have masters preferred, but you're starting $35,000-$40,000, like it's such a slap in the face that I could go work at UPS and make $20 an hour, you know. So if you are an institution that is shaping the future leaders, but you're paying educators at the level that we do, you know, it's like you have to get to an EDD or a PhD before you start to really see a way that you're compensated and you want to stick around in the profession. Like I hate to see every year educators leave the field. So I know this is like a broader topic, but we have to compensate properly or these programs are just going to continue to have lower enrollment. And I don't know how to solve that issue. It's just something that's frustrating to me to see, you know, how expensive every year tuition and fees and everything is more and more expensive, but yet our folks are burning out and leaving the field in masses. And so I wonder, like, who's going to shape up the future leaders if education is just burning out the professionals, you know? A lot of my colleagues, myself included, up until recently, before I came to HDF, I had a side gig. A lot of my fellow educators are bartenders, waitresses, dog walkers, you know, working at stores on the weekends just to have a lifestyle where they can go on vacation, and it shouldn't be that way. I don't know that was your question, but I went on my soapbox.
It's okay. It's a good answer. Reasonable answer for right now. Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I also see that we're losing our professionals, our minority professionals faster because of healthcare burnout. And that to me is something that is impactful, especially as someone who's a minority. I want to continue seeing my people like at the workplace, you know, and just seeing that trend is interesting, but we have to do better with that. There has to be something better for that. So that's my soapbox for that one, Alex. But
and Brian, like me seeing that you know, were brave and you joined, you went straight to get your master's, and I love to see your energy. You know, I follow you on social media, and I just want us to keep you in education. So it's like, whatever it takes, like how can we make the field a better environment so that we can keep the Brians and the Carlas and the Nabils, you know, because we don't want people to be complacent. I show up every day and I want to stay hungry. I want to stay enthusiastic, and, you know, for my students, for our community who deserve it.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because, you know, like you said, when you're in the beginning, you say, you know, oh my God, you guys should get paid to do this. Like I am honestly just so excited to sit down with students, be an academic advisor, because I feel like I sit down with my peers, with my colleagues, and say, you know, have you used Plan My Degree? Have you used this tool? You know, just say that, wow, I'm gonna get paid to do something that I want to do is so exciting.
And I think, Brian, we've talked a lot this year. I feel like in our program, we don't shy away from these conversations about the problems that exist within the field of higher education, and really talking about what they are with specificity and what we need to do as professionals to start solving them at entry level and mid-level career. That these are issues within higher education, but as you move into the career field, you're going to be the ones empowered to solve them. That you need to be the one solving them, not waiting for administration or executive level leadership to solve them. This is the responsibility of the career professionals going into the field to disrupt the systems that exist And so we actually talk about this a lot within the program now, and especially within the capstone program, to say this is the responsibility of the folks working within the field to fix these problems, because the institution of higher education is not going to fix it. Neoliberalism says we can't fix it. There's finances involved, but the people within the institution can fix it. And so I think, Brian, I think that's true. I hope it's true. You can speak to whether or not we talk about it enough, or if we need to talk about it more. But
no, we do. We talk about it, and it's a safe space.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love to hear it.
Yeah. So we are going to go to question and answer. So if anyone has questions for Brian or Alex, this is the time for that. And then we have a little bit of information about the program we'll share before we wrap up.
I can go first. So Alex, I'm in a similar position. I first got my my work experience, and then I decided that, hey, I would like now to go and get my education. I guess, what are some recommendations that you would give me, anticipating that right now I have to balance, I will be balancing work, school, and my personal life? What are some recommendations that you have, or some advice that you wish you received before you entered into the program?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would definitely say, for me, taking no more than 2 classes a semester, the 6 credit hours. Yes, it took me maybe an extra year to finish the program, but it was also what's the rush? I'm already, I have a job. This is I didn't want to get overwhelmed, which one semester I took 9 and I regretted it. So I felt like 6 was a good balance for me. And, maybe even 3, because you're very new in your position. And I say with any position, it takes at least a full year to really kind of get it to go through the cycle. What happens in September, what happens in January. So I don't know when you're thinking about starting, but I know there's tuition reimbursement at UMKC. I don't remember if you have to be specific number of credit hours, but definitely find your community too, your support system. Make sure that your direct reports, your team, are supportive of you going to school, and that they're flexible with, letting you leave at 3:30 one day, or, when you have classes, because the better communication that you have with your team, especially since you're so new in your position, right? You want to make sure that they feel that by you taking on school, it's not going to take away from fulfilling your commitments. Okay. Yep. Okay. 6 credit hours. That's good.
Thank you.
Hello, y'all. How are you guys doing?
Good to see you.
Good to see y'all. First, before I ask my question, I just wanted to give Alex and Brian some love, because I was just thinking of I was just thinking there were so many, things that they said that I was so relatable to, and it kind of stuck with me throughout this whole thing. And so, pardon me for my background noise, I'm at the MSA office, but really, I just, so I don't know how I ended up. I'll tell you a little bit about how I ended up in this space. Brian probably knows my story. So, and it's so funny because both of Alex and Brian, we go way back from our MCC days too. So I came, finishing high school, I first had to, spend two years in summer recovery course just to graduate and make it on time of high school. Brian knows I was a knucklehead in high school. So education was not something I was ready to just work full time. My parents worked full time. My dad was a trucker. My mom was doing daycare stuff. And so I really wasn't really engaged in my educational life like that. And then I came into the senior year of high school, and when it was even time for college visits, I wasn't going on them. I would stay home just because I would not want to hear anything related to college at all. And so, and then it kind of brought me, I had a mentor of mine, of course, by way of surrounding myself with good people that said, stop the foolishness, I'm paraphrasing what he said, but it was a coffee conversation. And then he brought me, he was like, you need to do something with your life. I said, I don't know. I already know what I think. I was working like Chipotle or something during high school. So it was like, those jobs, side gig jobs. And then long story, I did that. And then he talked to me. He's like, you need to do something with your life. And then I was like, okay, what is that? What do you mean by that? And then I didn't see him as a mentor because he would come home like surprisingly say, hey, let's have dinner and stuff like that. And then I was like, okay, this dude keep bugging me, keep texting me like, hey, you know how in that mindset I never knew. And so and then he was like, let's go on a couple of Saturdays. I went, I think the first university I went to was the HBCU, the Jefferson City, Lincoln University, because I was thinking about HBCUs at the time. And then I went to MCC. I said I wanted to be at the, stay close to home. And so, but really, it's okay. Thank you, Alex. It's good connecting with you. And so I guess my question was,
I look forward to following up, Nabil. Sorry, I have to get going, but I'll catch up with you later.
Okay, all right, no problem. Because I surrounded myself with, so much of, and I really don't like, I have been a student worker for like 5 years now, working, probably Brian knows, he jumps that. I probably work in a lot of good spaces. And at the community college trio, I worked in advising also a little bit. And so my question, I guess, to you, Brian, it would be, how long did it take before, because I am at the point where I kind of know what I want to do, and it's higher education. But I guess how long did it take for you to say, okay, this is a space for me, and this is who I'm surrounded by? Because I've had a lot of people, probably the same amount of people me and you both surround ourselves with, who have said, well, this is a space for you. And so I guess a little bit, just tell me how long because it took me time, as a high school student, it took me time all the way to my community college days, and even here now. I'm finishing up my BA in December with an interpersonal communication studies degree. And then I look forward to jumping right into this program already. So Brian, just share a little bit, I guess, because I'm just, curious, I guess.
No, yeah, for sure. So similar story to you, I was like education, college, but I loved it. I fell into it. It's like, you know what? I'm just like, I just love helping people, love bringing that smile, bring that energy to the room. And, people, I saw it would make people's day better. I saw people would smile, that frown would be a smile. And I just kind of loved it. And, I finished my BA and during the pandemic, and, unfortunately I was a little struggling to find a job in the pandemic. And like I said, there was no GRE requirement. I said, what's stopping me? And like you said, we're surrounded by the same people, lovable people, great energy. And I said, you know what? I could actually make a career out of this. And I want to, and I want to look forward to going to work every day. I want to look forward to making people smile. I want to look forward to bringing that energy. And I just think, you know what? Higher education is going to be for me. And it is going to be for me. So yeah, that was just me. But to answer your question, when did I decide? Quite honestly, I didn't decide until I was in the middle of it. I started off as a public administration major in my master's, and I wanted to do the public service, do public change. But I said, you know what, this change has to be in higher ed because I don't see it, and that's what chose me to stay. And I got involved with Fresh and New and some Bridge Scholars and Res Life, and I said, wow, Brian is here to shake things up. That's me.
Awesome. Well, that's actually a really good transition to, I'm going to share a couple more slides if y'all don't mind. It's a good transition to this next slide, which is actually all the different career areas that you can participate in with the degree in higher education administration, including educational nonprofits, similar to some of the nonprofit work that Brian was doing. Although I think your nonprofit work was outside of higher ed before, but you could even go into educational nonprofits like Alex is doing. There's a lot of different nonprofit work that relates to the work that we do in higher education administration, as well as some of the career areas you see here on this slide. within higher education administration. Also wanted to share a little bit about the master's program as we wrap up today. So the Master of Arts in Higher Education Administration requires 36 credit hours, and there's a 2-year track for students who want to enroll in the program in what we call full-time, which is 3 classes per semester. That is in fall spring enrollment. So that's 9 hours per semester. Those students often are taking, maybe they have a graduate assistantship and then they take 3 classes per semester. They finish in 2 years. There's also a 3-year track where students take 2 classes per semester. And those are that's usually the track for students who work full-time while they're in the program. So Nabil, you might be interested in the first track, and Carla, you might be interested in the second track when you enroll in the program. And we can talk more about that if you're interested in setting up a meeting with me after this, or if you after you apply for the program. There are 9 required courses, and then each student gets to choose 3 elective courses. And we have 3 emphasis areas, but you can also choose 3 electives that from any area or from even other colleges. There's a student affairs emphasis area, an athletics emphasis area, and a foundations emphasis area. And we're happy to tell you more about each of those emphasis areas if you have more questions at the end or at another time. The program faculty, we include 2 full-time faculty, myself and Dr. Michelle Maher, who's the chair of the division. We also have a number of additional faculty, including Dean Michelle Smith, who's the Dean of Students at UMKC, Teresa Dilly, who coordinates all of our athletics and organizations classes, Dr. Rodney Smith, Dr. Alexis Petrie, Dr. Michael Smith, and Dr. Robert Grime, as well as a few others who teach here and there for us as we have courses available for them to teach. Our admissions requirements, as Brian has mentioned, there is no GRE required for the Master of Arts in Higher Education program. This is really important to us as a program. A number of schools during the pandemic removed their GRE requirement to increase enrollment. We did not remove our GRE requirement during the pandemic to increase enrollment. We have not had a GRE requirement for a number of years because we do not believe the GRE is an equitable source of information for graduate students. So we believe there are other sources of information that tell us about how you will perform in our program. We require an undergraduate GPA of 3.0 in any field. And I like to say the reason you can have an undergraduate major in any field is because our students in college come from any field. So people in higher education work with students from any major, so you should have any major too. In fact, my background is the undergraduate degree in fashion merchandising. We require a statement of interest to tell us why you're interested in a degree in higher education, 2 letters of recommendation, and your undergraduate transcripts. So why choose UMKC? Here are a few of the reasons that we think make UMKC and the Master of Higher Education program a great place to be. We have a unique urban serving perspective, a diverse community of students. We have a focus on social justice, equity, and organizational transformation. There are graduate assistant positions available for students who are interested, and we have evening courses that are convenient for working professionals. All of our courses start at 4:30 p.m. or later, and the coursework is applied to real life. As you heard Alex say, she was working first and then came to class and was able to apply the things that she was doing in real life to her classwork. And as Brian, I think, mentioned, he was in class learning about stuff, and then he was able to apply what he was learning in class to the work that he was doing in his graduate assistantship. So the coursework that we're doing is practical and pragmatic, but it's also focused on really helping you become a critical thinker about the issues that are happening in higher education. For more information, there's a link to our website. I'll be sending this out to everyone who is here today and who registered for the session. There's also a box of alumni testimonials that we're happy to let you can click on that website and read a little bit more from some of our other alumni. You can email me, and there's a link to apply as well. And I've also put the contact information for both of our panelists today. Thanks for coming. We have a few more minutes for questions for me about the program or for Brian before we wrap up, if you have any other questions.
Oh, if I can also add, we do also have summer courses each summer, right? Yeah,
we do also have courses in the summer. required and elective courses are available in
Yeah.
the summer. We just have those 2- and 3-year tracks. I just say for full-time enrollment in the fall and spring. Students usually only take one course in the summer. If they take courses in the summer courses are on an 8-week semester. Fall and spring courses are typically on a 16-week semester. Do you have any other questions about the program or anything else I can answer for you today? All right.
Thank you so much, you all. This was good.
You're welcome. Carla, did you have a question or just want to?
No, I also want to say thank you very much for the information.
Thank you. It was really nice to meet you both too. Thanks so much for being here today. Thank you, Brian, for participating in the work in the open house. Appreciate it, everyone. Have a great day.
You too. Take
You
care.
too.
Thanks.